My twin brother invented that I abused him and self-harmed to create evidence. My parents kicked me out at 15 without questioning it. 13 years later, they came back asking for money. But I demanded he admit the truth and exposed them all. I'm 28 years old. I'm a freelance content writer, and I basically live as a digital nomad, traveling the world, which sounds amazing when I say it out loud. But the truth is, I got here running away from something, like, not just seeking adventure, but also escaping from a family that literally destroyed me when I was a teenager. And what happened like 2 months ago made me realize I'm never going to be able to leave that behind completely, because they won't let me. You know? They show up when they need something and act like nothing happened, like they didn't ruin my life when I was 15 years old. I guess I should start at the beginning. When my twin brother Justin and I were kids. For as long as I can remember, like since I was 5 or 6 years old, Justin was the golden child of the family. The perfect one. The one who could do whatever he wanted without consequences. I was the other one, the one who was always doing something wrong, the one who was never good enough. I don't know exactly when that dynamic started, but I do remember specific moments that marked me. Like when Justin broke a window playing baseball in the house and my parents said, "Oh, honey, it's okay, accidents happen." But when I spilled juice on the carpet a week later, they grounded me for 2 weeks. Or when Justin got C's in math and my parents hired a private tutor, but when I got A's in everything, they just expected more. Like it was my obligation to be perfect and I didn't even deserve recognition. Things kept getting worse over the years. Honestly. In middle school, Justin played soccer, and basically every weekend was about his games. We'd all go watch him. We'd scream his name. My parents would buy pizza afterwards to celebrate even if his team lost. I ran track. I was actually pretty good. I won several medals in 800-meter races, but my parents never went to a single meet. Not one. They always had some excuse, that they had work, that they were tired, that track meets were boring to watch, because you just run in circles. I remember once I won first place in an important regional competition. I came home with my gold medal, super excited, and my mom barely looked up from her phone and said, "Oh, that's nice, honey," and kept texting. Justin walked in like 5 minutes later and mentioned he'd scored a goal at practice. Not even in an actual game, but at practice. And my parents went crazy with excitement. My dad hugged him and said, "I'm so proud of you, son." I just stood there with my gold medal hanging from my neck, feeling completely invisible. When we were like 13 years old, things got even worse. My parents found out I had Snapchat, which I know sounds super silly now, but at the time they acted like I'd committed a federal crime. They took away my phone for 3 months, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that they literally removed my bedroom door, like they unscrewed it and took it off the hinges. Because according to them, I had lost my right to privacy for having social media without their permission. I lived without a door on my room for 6 months. Can you believe it? I couldn't change clothes without someone potentially seeing me. I couldn't have private conversations. Nothing. And the most sickening thing is that Justin also had Snapchat. In fact, he had like 5 social media apps that my parents knew perfectly well existed, but they never said anything to him. 0 consequences. The real breaking point came when we turned 14. My parents threw this huge party for Justin, like they rented an event hall, hired a DJ, invited like 50 people from school. They easily spent about $2,000 on that party. For my birthday, which was literally the same day because we're twins. They told me I could invite 3 friends over for pizza at the house, but it had to be a different day because they didn't want me distracting from Justin's party. I ended up having my mini celebration a week later with my 3 friends, and honestly, it was nice. We went to the movies and ate pizza, and I had a better time than Justin probably did at his giant party. But the point is, the difference was so obvious that even my friends felt uncomfortable for me. But here's the thing that really triggered everything that came after. Justin's party was a total disaster. Turns out like 40 of the 50 people they invited didn't show up. Apparently Justin wasn't as popular as he and my parents thought, or maybe people just didn't want to go to his party. I don't know. But the hall my parents rented was basically empty. The DJ played music for like 10 people who looked super uncomfortable. It was humiliating for him, honestly. And although part of me felt satisfaction because finally something wasn't going perfectly for him, I also felt a little sorry for him. But that pity evaporated quickly when I saw how he reacted to all this. Justin was furious, but not at the people who didn't come to his party, but at me. In his head, in some twisted way, this was my fault. He started treating me even worse after that. Like he'd completely ignore me in the house, or make hurtful comments when my parents weren't listening. And then, like 2 months after our birthday, he started spreading rumors at school. The rumors were that I physically abused him, that I hit him at home, that I was violent and aggressive with him. At first, I thought it was a stupid joke that would end on its own, but Justin didn't stop. He'd tell anyone who would listen that his twin sister was abusive, that he was afraid of her, that at home she was a completely different person. And the sickest thing is that people believed him, because Justin was the golden child, the popular one, the charismatic athlete, and I was the quiet one who ran track and got good grades, but didn't have many close friends. Things escalated when Justin started showing up at school with bruises. I had no idea where they were coming from at first. I honestly thought maybe he was getting hurt in soccer practice, but then I saw that the bruises were in weird places, like under his eyes or on his arms in ways that didn't make sense for sports injuries. It took me like 2 weeks to realize what was happening, and when I finally understood, I felt like the ground was opening up beneath me. Justin was hurting himself on purpose to create evidence that I was abusing him. He was hitting himself in the face, probably with something hard, to give himself black eyes. He was pinching his arms until he left marks, all to make me look like an abuser. I tried to confront him once at home. I told him, "Justin, I know what you're doing and this is crazy, you have to stop." But he just looked at me with this cold smile and said, "Who's going to believe you? Mom and Dad already know you're problematic. Everyone at school knows you're weird. No one's going to believe your version over mine." And he was right, honestly. Because when the situation finally exploded, no one believed me. The school principal called my parents in for a meeting after a teacher reported Justin's bruises. I was there. My parents were there. Justin was there. The principal and a counselor too. The principal asked Justin directly what was happening, and Justin started crying, like really crying with tears and everything, and said that I hit him regularly at home, that I got jealous of him because our parents loved him more, that he'd tried to protect me and not say anything, but the beatings were getting worse and he was scared. I sat there completely paralyzed. I couldn't even speak because the magnitude of the lie was so big I didn't even know where to start defending myself. My parents looked at me with this expression of absolute disgust that I'll never forget. My mom started crying and my dad turned red with fury. I tried to explain that none of it was true, that Justin was hurting himself, that it was all an elaborate lie. But the more I talked, the crazier I sounded even to myself. The principal suspended me for 10 days while they investigated the situation. 10 days that turned into the worst nightmare of my life. The day I got home after that meeting, my dad had already packed all my stuff in black trash bags, everything. My clothes, my books, my track trophies, my computer, everything. The bags were at the entrance of the house and my dad was standing there with his arms crossed. He told me I had 10 minutes to get out of his house and that he never wanted to see me again, that he'd raised an abuser and that he'd given me everything, and this was how I repaid him, by hurting my brother. I tried to explain to him again, but he just yelled louder, "I don't want to hear you. I don't want your excuses. I don't want anything from you." My mom was inside. I could hear her crying, but she didn't come out to say anything. Didn't defend me. Didn't do anything. I called my grandmother, my dad's mom, who was basically the only person in the family who had always been kind of decent to me. I explained to her between sobs what was happening, and she arrived in 30 minutes. When she saw the trash bags and my dad standing there like a security guard, my grandmother exploded. I'd never seen her so angry. She yelled at my dad that he was a coward and a bad father, that he was making a huge mistake. How dare he throw his own 5-year-old daughter out on the street based on accusations without any real proof? She told him that if he didn't let me back in, she was going to call the police and Child Protective Services, that what he was doing was abandonment of a minor and he could go to jail for that. My dad didn't change his mind, but he got scared enough not to stop my grandmother from picking me up. We loaded all the trash bags into her car, me still crying, unable to stop, and we left. My grandmother lived like 45 minutes away in a 2-bedroom apartment. The extra room was basically her sewing office, but she turned it into my room that same night. She made me tea, let me cry on her couch for hours, and told me I could stay with her as long as I needed, that she was going to take care of me because clearly my dad had lost his mind. I had to go back to school after the suspension, and it was horrible, like the worst experience of my life up to that point. Everyone looked at me like I was a monster. The rumors had spread and grown. People weren't just saying I hit Justin anymore. But I'd also heard versions where supposedly I'd threatened him with a knife, or where I'd pushed him down the stairs. None of that was true, obviously, but no one asked me my version. I became an instant pariah. The 3 friends I'd had stopped talking to me. Teachers looked at me with distrust. At lunch, I'd sit alone in a corner, trying to make myself invisible. Justin, meanwhile, was the brave victim who had exposed his abusive sister. He received all the sympathy and attention in the world. People hugged him in the hallways, told him he was so strong for speaking up, that he was, "I'm going to be okay." I'd see him sometimes from across the cafeteria, and I could see this little satisfied smile on his face. He'd gotten exactly what he wanted. He'd completely destroyed me and come out as the hero of the story. I managed to graduate from high school 2.5 years later, which honestly was a miracle considering everything. My grades dropped a little. I went from being a straight-A student to getting B's and the occasional C, but I was still good enough to get into a decent college with a partial scholarship. My grandmother supported me financially as much as she could. She didn't have much money because she lived on her pension, but she helped me with what I needed. My parents never tried to contact me during that time. Not a call, not a message, nothing. Justin didn't either. It was like I'd died to them. College was where I finally started to heal a little. I moved to another city. No one knew me there. No one knew my story. I made new friends, went to parties, had something resembling a normal life. I studied communications because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I'd always liked writing. In my second year, a professor suggested I try freelance content writing to earn extra money, like blogs and articles for company websites. I started with small gigs that paid almost nothing, but I discovered I was pretty good at it. I had a knack for writing in different tones depending on what the client needed. I could research any topic and make it interesting, and I was responsible with deadlines. By the time I graduated from college, I was already making more money writing content than I probably would at a traditional office job. I decided to go the full remote work route and started traveling. First, I stayed in different cities in my country, working from cafes and co-working spaces, and then I ventured internationally. I lived 3 months in Colombia, then went to Thailand for half a year, then Portugal, then Mexico. Basically living off my laptop and exploring the world. It sounds romantic when I tell it like that, and I'm not going to lie. There are parts that are amazing, but I also did this partly because I didn't want to be in any fixed place where my family could easily find me. My grandmother was the only person from the family I kept in contact with. We'd talk on the phone every week. I'd send her photos of the places I was. She'd tell me about her knitting group and her cats. She never pressured me to fix things with my parents, never made me feel guilty for having gone far away. She just supported me, told me she was proud of me, that I'd turned a horrible situation into something positive. She died like 3 years ago, from a heart attack, and honestly, it was devastating because she was my only real family. I went to her funeral and my parents were there, Justin too, but we didn't talk. We looked at each other from a distance during the ceremony and that was it. Things continued like that for years. I worked, traveled, dated people, had casual relationships, went to therapy when I could, to process all the trauma from my adolescence. It was a good life in many ways, but there was always this sadness in the background, you know? This feeling that I'd been robbed of something fundamental, that I was never going to have a normal family, that I was always going to carry this horrible story, that I couldn't even tell new people I met because it sounded too dramatic to be true. Like 6 months ago, I had this big project with a tech company that needed content for their new website. The project went super well, and it turned out the CEO of the company had media contacts, and somehow that led to me being invited to an interview on a morning TV show about the rise of remote work and digital nomads. It was a local show from a big city. Nothing super famous, but it had decent viewership. I talked about my lifestyle, about how to build a career as a freelance content writer, about the challenges and advantages of working from anywhere in the world. And the interview lasted like 15 minutes, and I thought that would be the end of it. Something cool that happened, and that's it. 2 weeks after the interview aired, I received an email from my mom, the first contact I'd had with her in years. It didn't start with an apology or questions about how I was doing. None of that. It started with, "Hi Stephanie, we saw your interview on television and we were very happy to see you're doing well." And then it went straight to the real point of the email, which was that they needed money to renovate their house. According to the email, they needed to replace the roof and do some important repairs, and didn't have enough money saved. And since I'd looked so successful on television, they thought maybe I could help them. They were asking for like $15,000. I read that email probably 20 times, trying to process the absolute audacity. These people who threw me out on the street when I was 15 years old, who believed Justin's lies without even questioning them, who hadn't tried to contact me in over a decade, were now asking me for money because they saw me on TV and assumed I had cash. Not an apology, not a, hey, how have you been, we were wrong about you. Just give me money for my roof. I didn't respond immediately because I was too angry, and I knew if I wrote something in that moment, it was going to be pure venom. I waited like 3 days, talked to my therapist about how to handle this, and finally sent them a response. I told them I would consider helping them financially under one condition: that Justin admit publicly, in front of all the extended family, that he had lied about the abuse, that it had all been fabricated, that I never touched him, and that he hurt himself. I told them I needed that admission in writing, specifically a message or email that I could show other family members who still saw me as the villain of the story. My mom responded like 2 hours later, saying that was ridiculous, that 15 years had passed and I needed to let go of the past. Why did I have to be so resentful? That if I really loved them, I should help them without conditions. She didn't mention at all the validity of what I was asking. Didn't say Justin, didn't lie, or your request is unfair, because what happened was real. She just said I should forgive and forget, which basically was an indirect admission that they knew Justin had lied, or at least that they had doubts, but they weren't willing to admit it officially. I responded saying my offer stood. Either Justin admitted the truth or they wouldn't get a penny from me. But there was no response for like a week, and I thought that's where it would all end, that they'd just leave me alone again. But then I received a text message from Justin directly. The message said something like, "Okay, Steph, yes, I lied 15 years ago about the abuse thing. I was jealous and angry and I acted like an idiot. But they were kids, and a lot of time has passed. I don't understand why you're still clinging to that. Mom and Dad really need the money for the house and you obviously have it, so I don't know why you're being so selfish. I thought you'd matured, but I see you're still the same bitter person as always." I read that message and I literally started shaking with rage. First of all, the admission was there, but it was minimized to the maximum. We were kids. I acted like an idiot, as if it had been a minor prank and not an elaborate lie that destroyed my adolescence and my relationship with my family. And second, he was immediately blaming me again, calling me selfish and bitter for not wanting to give them money after everything they did to me. I took a screenshot of the message and wrote a long, detailed email explaining the whole story from my perspective. I explained the extreme favoritism during our childhood, the disastrous birthday party, the rumors Justin started, how he hurt himself to create evidence, how they threw me out of the house, everything. I attached the screenshot of Justin's message, admitting he lied. And I sent that email to like 15 people, basically all my extended family, uncles, aunts, cousins, people who had been at my grandmother's funeral and probably still thought I was a violent abuser. The response was explosive. I received like 30 messages in the following hours, some from relatives who didn't know the full story and were horrified, others from people defending my parents, saying I shouldn't air the family's dirty laundry publicly. My mom sent me a message saying I'd destroyed the family, that Justin was devastated. How dare I? My dad sent me an even worse one, full of insults and telling me I was a horrible and vindictive person. Justin sent me like 10 messages in a row, alternating between calling me a bitch and a victim and dramatic. Honestly, it was chaotic but also liberating in a strange way. For the first time in my adult life, I'd told the world my version of the story, with proof that Justin had admitted he lied. Not everyone believed me, obviously. Some people in the family still sided with my parents because they'd spent years seeing them as the victims who had dealt with a problematic daughter. But enough people believed me, enough people took my side, and that meant something. The messages from my immediate family kept coming for days, increasingly aggressive and threatening. My dad got to the point of saying he was going to sue me for defamation, which was absurd, considering I had literal proof of Justin admitting he lied. I finally hired a lawyer who sent a cease and desist letter to my parents and Justin, basically telling them to stop contacting me or face legal consequences. That shut them up. It's been like 2 months since all that. I haven't received any more messages from them since the lawyer's letter arrived. Some relatives still send me occasional messages, mostly supportive, telling me they're so sorry they didn't see what was happening when I was a teenager, that they wish they'd intervened. It's nice to hear that even though it doesn't change the past, I'm still traveling, Still working, still in therapy, processing all this because the truth is that even though I finally got something resembling the vindication I needed, I still carry all the damage they did to me. Last week, I was at a cafe in Buenos Aires working on an article about digital marketing, and I started thinking about Justin, about how he's probably living his life now without real consequences for what he did. Yes, now there are like 15 people in the family who know he lied, but he still has our parents on his side. He's probably still the golden child in that sick dynamic they have. And yes, it makes me angry sometimes. I'm not going to lie. It makes me angry that he can move forward without his life exploding the same way mine did. But I also realize that I built something good from the ashes of all that. I have a life I chose, work I like, freedom to be where I want. And he's trapped being the person he always was, needing constant validation, needing to be seen as perfect, probably miserable in ways he doesn't even recognize. So I guess in a twisted way, I won in the end. Even though winning in this context means simply surviving and building something of my own. Far from all that toxicity. It's enough for now, I think.